Hello, and thank you all for joining in, taking the time to participate in this webinar on research. I really want to thank the NF Network and Kim and the whole team, Debbie and John and everybody for their support for research and all they do for NF. And I think this is a really nice program that they've got going with this series of webinars to get everybody aware of what kinds of research is going on and all they do to support it. So I'll move ahead. Here we go. Well, what do people think about research in the NF community? And I'm from the group NF Tennessee, and we put out a survey that we've had out for the last year and a half or so, asking individuals their thoughts on a lot of topics, but when asking specifically about research for NF occurring in Tennessee, 90% of the individuals who responded agreed strongly that that was important to them. And in fact, it was the highest category or question in terms of a strong response like that on the whole survey. I was really impressed by that. So a lot of people think it's important. What's behind that? Well, the whole collection of NF-related disorders are relatively rare, and there's a lot of unknowns. So research answers a lot of important questions. And I think in seeing what's happening in research, people get a feel for what is developing in the field, what the new ideas are. New knowledge is coming about, and that feeds into some very important things for patients as far as a sense of progress and a sense of hope that better things will be available as treatments for them. So it is really important. What else do people say about research? Well, there are a lot of barriers, both personal and practical issues that make people somewhat reluctant or question why do this? Would it help? People might say, well, for my problems, is that going to be worthwhile information for other people? And I have other problems besides NF. Does that impact what I can do? A lot of people say they don't want to be a guinea pig. They don't want to take extra risks, that kind of thing. And you see here, the guinea pig is kind of the great example of a laboratory research animal. They're not from Guinea and they're not pigs, but they sure are a hallmark for an experimental research project. Anyway, people feel like they don't want to be in that situation or that it might be too risky for them. There's also time and expense and travel and things like that that go into a lot of traditional clinical research, particularly clinical trials. And for some people, that's just prohibitive. And then there's the question of where would I find out about research? And, if it's all medical and science jargon, am I going to understand any of it? These barriers, and I would say personally, I think the personal barriers are a bigger a holdback or a bigger reason why people don't get involved. But this whole list and a longer one you could imagine, researchers are aware of and are doing things systematically to try and reduce these barriers or make it more comfortable and conducive for people to participate in research. And a lot of the rest of what I'm going to talk about really highlights ways to be involved and participate that might be easier and get more people involved. So what opportunities are there? Well, I was for many years involved in the NF clinic at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And we had kind of a spectrum of research opportunities that we tried to get people involved with. There's simple things, relatively simple, like participating in registries and things like that, extremely low risk and easy to do. And then there's all the way to clinical trials for tumors, and including we were involved in some of the MEK inhibitor trials. Um, Occasionally would have patients that needed other experts and needed trials that we didn't have. And so there's that whole spectrum. Two that I want to specifically point out that really opened my eyes to some new ways of thinking about research in NF. We had a graduate student a couple years ago, Michaela Bradley, who wanted to do a survey trial on stress and coping and whether or not a patient with NF1 had a family history of NF. And she put this all together and said, well, in estimating how many patients need to respond to this, it would take about 700 to get good results. And I'm thinking, well, you do chemo trials, and if we get one or two in a year, oh, we think we've struggled to do that, you know. So to get 700, wow, is that really possible? And she put together a coalition, a team of different organizations and different ways of reaching out. And in the course of a few months, 3 or 4 months, got almost all of the data collected for this. It was really incredible and eye-opening for me. And it is the case that she's moving forward with that, and I think it's going to be the case that that will be published soon, you know. So really a great job and an eye-opening experience. And the other thing that I found a couple, probably 3 or 4 years ago, work by Dr. Merker in Boston at Mass General with the NF clinic there, that was an online research and training project for young adults, mainly young adults with stress and anxiety. And so this was right in the COVID era, and to have something like that available online, and really now anytime online, those kinds of opportunities really have come to the fore. And so those are two things that really kind of catalyzed my thinking about how to get more availability, you know, as far as research goes for NF patients. Well, how to look? Where would you go to find, you know, research opportunities? And I think, oh, here's a list. I'm sure that it's not entirely exhaustive, but to go to national NF organizations, all of them support research and make that a big part of their program. And that's a good place to start to hunt for trial opportunities. Almost every institution that has an NF clinic, and there's quite a few really, and really good ones across the country and around the world, they all have listings of clinical trials. That's another place you might look. And then there are online databases for trials, and basically the entire gamut of clinical research you can find in trials that are in online databases. And we'll talk through each of those. I think it's really important when you go in and are seeing your NF doctor, your NF specialist, to ask about clinical trials for the particular problems that you're facing. And there too, almost all of the people in this community as medical providers will have some insights about what's available. And so they're a good source. What and how to understand it and how to get involved, they can help you with. I think it's good to build a knowledge base, and you'll find some of these sites where you look online that you can actually save your search strategies and kind of come back to them and update them and build your knowledge base that way. It's important in all of these things that we do online to exercise some good judgment, and you know, not every source is a medical source, and so be a little bit you know, conscientious about and think through, well, are you getting expert advice or not, you know. People worry a lot about their computer skills, and I would say if you can email and you can do a Google search, you can do all of what I'm talking about. And if you need help in doing that, there are people who can do that. If you need help in understanding the material that you find and what's really relevant, and there are people that can help you that way too. So seek out the help if you need it, but it's really not that difficult. As far as national resources, now I'll start with the NF Network, and they have a real strong effort now to support research through clinical trials and through research grants. And you'll find on their website drop down page that says participate in NF research. And on there, you'll find 4 currently, right there on the page, research opportunities that you can get involved with. One's about community care for NF, which Dr. Merker will tell you about more. One's sleep, one's cognitive changes as people get older, and one's on early tumor detection. But here, right online, you can find 4. There are also links on the NF Network website to clinicaltrials.gov. We'll talk about that more later. And when you look there, they have it queued up to search for NF trials. And it will show you a total of 337, of which 69 are currently actively recruiting patients, and 15 haven't even opened for recruitment yet. But so it kind of builds from back since this database began 20 plus years ago, all of the trials that have been registered on it, which is a huge number. They also have on the NF Network webpage a link to the Clinical Trials Consortium, and there are 11 chemotherapy trials available there. They have a link also to Antidote, which is a trial database where you put in information about yourself, and really not very much, and it will provide you with information about trials that are relevant to your medical condition. And so this is actually a good way to kind of be aware and find studies that are relevant to you. In addition to the NF Network's homepage and website, there are these member organizations that are part of the NF Network. And NF Tennessee, again, the one that I'm connected with, is the newest one and really the kind of infant of this group. And all these others are organizations that have a long history of support for research and interest in getting patients involved in research. And sometimes you'll find information that's locally relevant as far as trials and surveys and things like that. So all of these are good places to go and look when you're searching for what is open and available as far as clinical trials. The other really kind of largest of the national resources for patients is the Children's Tumor Foundation and their website, which of course has a NF registry. They support research a lot, but they also sponsor this registry, which is for all types of NF and the schwannomatoses now. They have over many years collected information on individuals now I put 11,000, I think more currently it's well above that. And when I looked to see as far as in Tennessee, what was available or who was signed up on this registry, there were 270 individuals. And in the state of Tennessee, that would represent about 10% of the estimated NF population. It would be about 2,500, 2,700, something like that. And I thought, oh, that's really good. 10% sounds like a good number. And yet I also scratched my head a little and said, well, why isn't it 80 or 90%? And I think some of that is these personal barriers or people feeling like, oh, it won't make a difference, it won't help, or why should I put my info out there? It really does make a difference. It's become a valuable source for guiding new research endeavors, new problems to focus on. It really has been valuable that way. It's valuable to pharmaceutical companies, what problems have the biggest number of patients that are affected, those kinds of things. This registry also, as a bonus, I shouldn't say a bonus, but as a very valuable contribution, it will find and let you know about trials that are relevant to the problems that you include in your information. And this is back from a couple of years ago, but they sent out information to those target patients on 51 different research studies in 2022. So, I mean, they can get back to you and say, here's something that may be of special interest to you for research. So that's a great thing that they contribute and that you get back from participating. There are some other registries and also natural history studies, which are a little bit of a different category. The natural history studies often are not just putting in information, but involving getting some kind of testing, maybe an MRI or blood testing or some kind of evaluation that can be followed serially, as years go by, to kind of understand how things progress or if things stay stable. Those kinds of studies, natural history studies, were fundamental to the story of MEK inhibitor treatment for plexiform neurofibromas, where when people got started, they said, well, do these tumors grow? How fast do they grow? What percentage of the tumors change over how many years? That kind of what would be viewed as control information really was available because of natural history studies. So the NIH has studies that have been open or currently are. I also found at Johns Hopkins, they had kind of a interesting larger list of natural history studies and registries, and I think they're really worth looking at. There's an NF2 Natural History Consortium that's run out of the House Ear Institute in California. There are registries that are basically genetic information registries, and particularly I'll mention the NF2 mutation registry in the United Kingdom. And then St. Jude's has a study here in Memphis, Tennessee, that is monitoring familial cancer predisposition. Let me move ahead. As far as searching institutional sites, again, there are a lot of good NF institutions, good NF clinics, I should say, and their websites will include a list of trials. I particularly was impressed looking at the Johns Hopkins list, how it was organized, and I thought useful in terms of what was open and available there. Some places have extensive lists of what they've done in the past, and you can look at them, like Washington University and St. Louis. I've got to stop for a minute. Excuse me, if I could pause, Debbie. There are a lot of good NF clinics around the country and across the world, and they all have good websites, or essentially all of them, and sometimes that's a place where you might go to look for what trials are available. I found that a little bit less efficient and less productive in a sense. And yet some of them are very good. And just for example, the Johns Hopkins NF Center, they really have a nice website with trials laid out, and I think it shows what's active and that kind of thing. Washington University in St. Louis has an extensive list of trials, and yet a lot of those are trials that have been done, kind of over the years and aren't necessarily active now. And it shows what a long history they have of research, and yet it's a little harder to say, well, what would be available now when you use that site. And I think a lot of the clinics will have links to clinicaltrials.gov or other databases, and yet not so much in terms of what's available there at their site. At Vanderbilt, I think one of the problems with looking is that our NF trials get mixed in with a long list of oncology trials, and at other places it might be listed along with neurosurgery or neurology trials. And so it's a little bit harder to search and find what you're looking for. So you can, if you're going to one of these places or there's a particular physician that you want to see what they're working on, this is a good strategy. But in general, I think it's a little bit harder to use as a search strategy for finding research opportunities for you. There are some other national organizations, just to kind of complete this part of the discussion, that are worth looking or worth knowing about. The NORD, National Organization for Rare Diseases, they do a lot of good research and a lot of patient information about it. And the Acoustic Neuroma Association, which is based, I think, in Atlanta, they have a very nice website with a lot of information about research related to their trials. Another one that I like a lot that's a relatively new one is Combined Brain, which is kind of a coalition of a whole about 40 or more rare neurodevelopmental disorders. Almost all are mutations or deletions or other genetic abnormalities associated with neurodevelopmental problems and tied in heavily to research. And I think that's NF isn't specifically part of that, but it's as a model, a very nice organization to look at. Now, moving on to online databases for clinical trials. The number one premier option here is clinicaltrials.gov, and it has become the case that to have a trial open, it almost has to be registered with clinicaltrials.gov. Over the last 20 plus years, they have built up a database that is over 500,000 trials, and about 76-75% of those are treatment interventions, and about 24% are observational. But it's this huge trial base of all kinds of studies. They also, on the website, have an extensive list of how to and what to look for and what to think about in terms of clinical trial options. Very good, informative things that you can learn about clinical trials as you look at their website. In the practical sense of how to do searches on it, they have that on their website. There are also videos that you can look at that show you how to do it. You can find even on YouTube, navigating clinicaltrials.gov. I found a very good recent one, and recently the clinicaltrials.gov updated their format and layout and made it, I think, very much easier to navigate. And there's a real nice one on YouTube that describes that. Another kind of interesting up and coming thing is the use of AI algorithms to match clinical trials to potential volunteers. And that's something I'm sure other people are working on, but the NIH sure is. So some very good information that you can get from them. Oh. Sorry, there we go. When you look on their website, it's required that it states what the purpose for the treatment or drug is. These are sometimes in detail. It gives all the details of who is eligible and who is not eligible for a particular trial, where the trials are open, and the point of contact for patients. So really the core stuff of how to connect with them if it looks interesting to you. They also have discussions of side effects for these trials. Eventually, basic results get put in, although oftentimes that's after the study is completed. A lot of times the results part isn't updated as the study's going on. So in that regard, it doesn't always answer your questions, but still, the information is pretty well laid out now, I think. When I did a search for NF1 on clinicaltrials.gov, I found 253 trials, of which 43 were recruiting and 13 were not open for recruitment yet. So a pretty big list, really, and kind of, if you really want to get into research in NF, a good place to see the breadth, of it, what topics are being studied, that kind of thing. Being interested in what's going on in Tennessee and what's available for our patients here, adding that to the search shows that currently there are 5 active trials. And a few months ago, I found 7, and you do every once in a while look back and look again rather and find that it's changed and updated and worthwhile every once in a while looking. Here are the searches for NF2 and schwannomatosis. There were 82 studies all told, of which 14 were currently recruiting. And in Tennessee, there was 1. And again, here's a website where you can save your search strategies. And you might write them down, but it'll allow you to save them so that you can go back again and go through the same search to see what's new. One thing you'll find on their homepage that's really interesting is something that was developed at Vanderbilt, remarkably. And I'm not part of the institute that did this, but it's called Victor, and it was designed to help people doing clinical research, researchers. And one of the things that they wanted to help do was connect researchers to patients who were, the target population for their trials. This is called researchmatch.org. It currently has over 120,000 individuals who have signed up as potential volunteers and over 16,000 researchers and 1,333 clinical trials. It's a pretty huge, a database, really. Looking for NF, there are 14 trials. There are 70 people out of the 120,000 who list NF as part of their profile. So this is a way that if you put in your information, they will send you information about contacts for relevant trials. So a good way to be updated about new things and what is eligible for you. I got on this and put in my information, and I periodically get things back based on my age and what they're looking for volunteers for and things like that. But it's very good to see that you get information back from them. A similar kind of trial database is Antidote, and this was on the NF Network site also, but they had 35 trials listed for NF1, and here you can see when I put in my age and such, what it showed in terms of trials. For NF2, they had 7 trials. Here again, they will kind of match you to trials that are relevant to your medical condition, the information you put in about it. Okay, switching gears just a little bit. The people who really want to get into the nitty gritty of developing clinical trials questions, designing trials and things like that. That's an important background piece in what happens in trial development, and in NF, it's become a very organized and systematic process. And there's a group, it's called RAINS, Response Evaluation and Neurofibromatosis and Schwannomatosis, where they have committees for a whole set of different outcomes. on each of these committees, there would be researchers and statisticians, a whole bunch of people, including patient representatives. And there's even a committee that's about patient representatives and how they contribute to the process. But these groups go through and develop, well, what are the best outcomes? How much smaller would a tumor have to be for me to be healthier? Or how many headaches do I have in a month? And what is an important difference if I have one less or five less? Or those kinds of questions. What really is a valuable outcome? They publish their work, and so if you wanted to read what the experts came up with as endpoints for their clinical trials in all of these things in NF, you can find those published. And a good place to search for that is on the National Cancer Institute website, looking for RAINS. And I think I just Googled RAINS International Collaboration to get that. Dr. Merker, who is really one of the powerhouses, I would say, of this process, recently published a work where they looked at patient engagement and what that contributed. And they did a survey looking at what were the barriers, what are the motivations for patient representatives, what are the outcomes of having them involved, and concluded that it made a big difference. It really improved the perceived quality of the clinical trials for NF that were accomplished. And when it says perceived, I think it's important. Well, who is looking? You know, whose perceptions are we talking about? Patients, doctors, researchers, grant reviewers, pharmaceutical companies, the FDA. There's a long list of people that use what's generated and in the research sphere to decide, where to go and what to work on. And having patients involved in that process of development of trials, the way this does it, really makes a difference. So just to kind of summarize about RAINS, selecting meaningful outcomes is important. Engaging patients in the design of trials is important. Helping to identify new areas of research and important outcomes is something that bringing patients in accomplishes. And this whole collaboration has improved outcome measures and the creation of new outcome measures for clinical trials. So this is really a place, if you want to get involved in research, this is kind of a great opportunity. And they have, Dr. Merker and her team, a way to join if people want to be involved. And a number of people on the NF Network board are involved. Rachel Mindrup, whose portraits of individuals with NF, she kindly allows me to use in my talks. She's one of the people that's involved. So anyway, this is a great opportunity if you really want to get into research in a helpful, important way. One other thing that's available and is I think one of the best things available in NF research is the NF Clinical Trials Consortium, which is a group of institutes with the best NF experts and researchers and the infrastructure to do clinical trials extremely well and to get a lot of patients in these studies where the eligibility criteria are very strict and hard to recruit patients to. Dr. Korf has for many years been the director of this, and I think this is probably in a little bit outdated because I think there are going to be some other people involved in the directorship of the Clinical Trials Consortium, but he has been the flag waver and the leader of this for a long time, and they've done some great work. and they have work in progress, and it's one of these things that unfortunately has been really kind of hit by changes in terms of federal funding of research and things like that. And this is the crown jewel in NF research, and hope that there's a way to move forward with what they've done and have underway. So in conclusion, participating in NF registries and clinical research, if you can do it, do it. And again, there's a lot of barriers and reasons why not everybody can do it, and yet it's a great thing for yourself and for the community of NF patients as well. A good starting point is to ask your doctor, ask your specialist. They know a lot of this stuff and can help guide you as to what's useful and connect you to people if they can't help you with getting on trials and things like that. There are some great ways to get started on the national organizations' websites, and also the regional organizations for NF provide a lot of this information that I think is very helpful. The online databases, I think, are kind of the largest and best organized and best available places to really search regularly. And if you're really gung-ho about it and want to sink your teeth into it, the RAINS is a great way to participate. So I would consider this. I would say, as a conclusion, view the long journey that you're on with NF, and keep learning more and more about it, and new ideas keep coming up. Search and learn how to look for new ideas, and clinical trials are part of that process. And find a way to share what you've learned. I think that's a message that resonates in the NF community, and a lot of people share that. And that'll be my concluding point. Many thanks again to the NF Network for hosting this series of webinars, and it's a real pleasure for me to participate, and if you have questions, get them to us and we'll try and answer them. Thank you.